join the meeting, we'll just welcome them. So this meeting's a little bit different just based on the voting that has to take place for the redistricting committee. And for part of that, it is important that we just know who's in the room with us and what wards that they are a part of, because the way that voting will go is if more than one person is seeking the position for, say, Ward 1, then we need to go through and have like a roll call vote and call on each person. So that way we know who wins. And so I've gone through on the screen and tried changing everyone that I knew in terms of what ward they live in. I have a few folks that I just want to confirm though. And then Jonathan, I'll pass it to you and you can kind of go around the in-person room. Jack, are you in Ward 8 or Ward 1?
Ward 8.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And then Jean, are you Ward 8 or 1?
Ward 1.
Great, thank you. And then, sorry, just changing this. And then Gail, are you just here to watch or are you in Ward 1 or 8?
No, I'm not. I'm in Ward 4.
Okay, great, thank you. I think that is everyone on my screen. And then Jonathan, if you just want to make note of all the folks in the in-person room, that would be great.
Yeah, Richard, you're Ward 1, right? Ward 1, Angie, Ward 1.
Ward 1.
Carol.
Ward 1.
Ward 1.
Mm-hmm.
You are.
And I'm Kirsten from CETA over here in the corner. I'm Ward 6.
Okay, great, thank you. And then as folks come in, we'll just so all of you know, we're gonna have to stop and kind of do that as well, just so we know. So now we are going to head into announcements. Does anyone have any announcements? And then we'll go into speak out. Nope. Okay. We're going to go into speak out now. Brian is already in speaking order. And then if there's anyone else that would like to participate, please just indicate by raising your hand. And so that way I know to put you in speaking order. So Brian, feel free to start.
Thank you. Can you tell me approximately how long I have so I can make sure I pace myself and hit the key points within the time constraints?
I think you can just okay. Speak. I won't cut you
You
off.
never want to say that to an elected official because we become like accustomed to like taking up lots of space, but I will be conscious and try to make it brief. Because tomorrow night at the Ward 2-3 NPA, I'm going to give an in-depth presentation. So I really just wanted to give people like this is like the trailer. Okay. So, and I did post on Front Porch Forum today so people could read some details there. So, as the COVID-19 pandemic has unfolded, it's amplified the inequities and disparities of our society. And the pandemic has contributed to greater mental health and substance abuse issues for people from all backgrounds, although it's disproportionately affected our most marginalized and vulnerable people. And the public health emergency of COVID-19 has intensified the public health emergency of racism. And there has been a racial justice awakening, which has led for calls for everything from greater community control of the police to the reform of police policies to the complete abolition of the carceral state, which costs massive amounts of money, but neither effectively impacts the causes of crime nor consistently provides real justice. So as we debate the future of police in our society, we also have to keep moving forward with alternative ways to meet the needs of people through all of our systems of public safety, healthcare, and social welfare. And I've been reading the recent articles following community discussions through the pandemic. Oscar and Isgood at the community coalition meetings, at Isgood meetings, I've talked with neighbors and listened to their concerns. I've listened to all sides. Everyone may not agree on the fate of the police as an institution, but I think where we have some agreement is that the police are being asked to do things that police shouldn't be doing. And that when you look at the numbers behind their calls, they're now telling us that they can only focus on I believe what they call level 1 or priority 1 calls. But when I look at what those calls are, part of me says they should be focusing on that. They should not be dealing with quality of life issues. And that when we look at what causes quality of life issues, policing is never going to solve that. It's something else. And so I've been sort of thinking about this, and I've sort of imagined a possible alternative way for us to meet people's needs. And it's based on my experiences, not only as a community organizer with Is Good, but as a street outreach worker and as a crisis clinician. So I'd like to just let you know that I'm going to be bringing forward a detailed proposal for a new program called the NOW program, Neighborhood Outreach Worker Program. And what it would do is it would provide peer outreach and support services by training and paying teams of neighbors, one student in the team and one resident who's not a student. And they would be peer outreach workers so that they could work together in the neighborhoods surrounding the colleges to address quality of life issues. And they would do this from the angle of being peacekeepers and guardians of the public good. The quality of life issues that they could address would be things like noise disturbances, parties, disorderly conduct, fighting, fireworks, fires, littering, and vandalism. There might be more, but those were some things I felt based on my experience as an outreach worker, we could train people to do who are not police. And the idea is that the teams would walk the streets, and I'm thinking to start, it would be like the party nights, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday as a test. And they'd be part-time positions so that you didn't have to commit to this as your main job. If you have another job, it's something extra you could do. Or maybe a retired person would want to do it, or a student, it would make sense for a student to do it because it's not a 40-hour-a-week commitment. And they'd walk the streets regularly and attend community events to get to know neighbors before problems arise. And they could be called directly by neighbors, or 911 could dispatch them when they get a quality of life call. And it would provide an unarmed first response to quality of life complaints. It would also take that burden completely off the police's plate. They would only have to come if it escalated beyond the scope of what those outreach workers could handle. However, those outreach workers would be trained in so many skills, and we have precedent in Burlington in the program I worked in at Spectrum, in the current street outreach program, where we have successfully de-escalated fights and then avoided the police needing to come. So it's possible that with proper training, they can actually prevent the need for the police. They could intervene before we have giant street parties blocking the street. You know, they could really change our strategy by like preventing the larger scale problems and preventing violence. And not only would they intervene and use their training to help de-escalate and resolve conflict, they would have direct access to emergency services. So if there is an emergency, they can immediately get someone there, and it's like, maybe it's a button or something, we could figure it out. And then they would follow up after incidents, similar to what Oscar does, which I find to be very effective, where they would go to people's homes afterwards and say, what happened? Let's talk about this. How did things get to this point? What are your needs? What are your unmet needs? What are the problems you're facing? They could also connect people with resources that they need, that might be driving criminal behavior. They could also teach relationship skills to neighbors to build our collective competency as a community for dealing with quality of life issues. And they would provide ongoing support with practicing those skills. And they would design interventions as problems arise with the community in ways that empower people. And they would do it under the supervision of a full-time director who would be a professional social worker. And they would get professional social work supervision, which is pretty intensive supervision. And we could talk more about that another time. But finally, they would be accountable to the community because they would collect data, and I would want them to collect data in a way that protects privacy, but gives us accurate numbers about what's going on out there. They would report that in a way that's meaningful and accessible to the community. And we would ask that they have regular engagement in the NPAs and other public venues. So I'm gonna finish my PowerPoint tonight and give it tomorrow at the 2-3 NPA, and it's going to include some specific details about the numbers, some funding source ideas, the theory behind it, etc. So I just wanted to give you a heads up since I couldn't give the full presentation, but it actually worked out better because I need a little more time because I've been so busy. But if people want to see the full presentation, feel free to come to watch it, from the Ward 2-3 NPA, and I'd be happy to walk through it with people. And I just want to end by saying, that this is the start of a discussion about this proposal, that I am open to modifying it, because the more neighbors I talk with, the better it gets. Like the more we're addressing people's needs. So I do think as part of developing this program, we'd want to do some kind of formal needs assessment so that we can make sure we design something, and it would be a pilot project. So, you know, we try it out for a while and then decide, do we want to keep doing this, expand it, end it? What did we learn from it, et cetera? So I see a hand and I probably went over my time. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, Brian, this is Tom Darenthal. I'm taking the minutes for this meeting. Can I, when you have the PowerPoint available, get a copy of it?
Yeah, I'm happy to send that to you.
Okay. Kirsten, are you the one who collects the stuff?
I will post them to the NPA website for both NPAs, so if that can be copied on that.
All right, if you copy Kirsten, then she'll make it available to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I see Karen, you have your hand up. You're muted.
Sorry. I think that's a great idea. And I wanted to say that probably 10 years ago or so, when our code enforcement officer was Ray O'Connell, we did this and it was actually kind of fun. I remember doing it with Sandy Wynn and Gene Bergman and Ray and other citizens that walked on, you know, like a Friday night, Saturday night. And when porch parties were pretty wild or whatever, we just stopped and talked to people and let them know, you know, what effect they were having to the neighborhood. And I think it was a great, great thing for the community. So I thank you, Brian. That's a great idea.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak at Speak Out? I believe Richard has his hand up.
I'd just like to address a couple of comments to Jack Hanson. Just to register, Jack, if you're there, I completely agree with Jane Nodell, probably the first time ever. Brooke Hadwin, Bonnie Acker, among others in our immediate neighborhood regarding their comments on Front Porch Forum about policing. Just like to say that, and if you'd like to follow up with me anytime, then you know where I am. The other thing I was going to say is you're going to discuss trash removal at some time shortly. And I filled in the survey and also sent a link to some other interested parties. I put the same link on the survey to say that in parts of central New York, with which I'm quite familiar, there's a very scalable method of handling residential trash and to a certain extent business trash, which I think should be under consideration by City Council when you're sitting around a table and talking about it. Very, very simply, it would be done completely by the city, except at some stage you hand the trash over to a contractor. And each resident, when they have trash, or in anticipation of trash, purchases a pre-marked bag of a certain color and leaves it with their recyclables, fills it in with trash and leaves it with their recyclables, and it's collected at the same time. If you don't have any trash, which we only put our trash out about once every 2 weeks, for instance, you don't have to pay a thing. And I think it addresses some of the concerns I've seen in 7 Days and on Front Porch Forum about why should I pay a tax when I generate hardly any trash. It's so simple. It's probably the reason why no one has come back to me on it. So I'd be glad to discuss it with anyone. I think it's a very, very simple solution to what is obviously going to be a contentious issue. So thanks.
Okay, and then Carol, did you have your hand raised?
No, I was just asking about the ward affiliation and that you took care of that, Hannah. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, final call for speak out. Okay, not seeing any hands. So now we are going to go on to the redistricting ad hoc committee appointment process. So as I mentioned at the start of this meeting, we are going to go through, and first Tom is going to give us an overview of the process. And then after that, we'll go into nominations, first going for Ward 1, then going to Ward 8. If more than one person is seeking the seat, then we will have to vote by going around and having each person signal who they're voting for. So that's why you see your ward affiliation. And then if only one person is, then it can be like we just vote at once. And then prior to voting, though, there'll obviously be an opportunity for questions and for that person to give the reason why they would like to serve. So Tom, I believe you are going to give an overview.
Yeah, can I share a file?
I believe so, yeah.
We don't have a chat function on the webinar format,
Oh, sure. Screen.
but you could share screen. Yeah, let me just give you privileges for that. So you can share screen now.
All right, I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm going to be fairly brief. As you may or may not have heard, the city council has passed a resolution calling for an ad hoc committee on redistricting. This is different from what was done the last go around for redistricting. And this committee is really charged by city council to come up with ideas on how to do redistricting. And there's really two components to that. One is what the structure of city council should be. Should we have just a straight number of wards? Should we have wards and districts as we have today? And if we do make changes, how many wards and or districts should we have? The other piece that I think is not yet available is that this group would also perhaps make suggestions as to how ward boundaries could be changed. Given that the city has grown roughly 7.5% over the last 10 years, there's some chance that ward boundaries may need to move to make the wards more even. And it's like a plus or minus 10% rule that is being imposed on the city in terms of population per ward. So as a member of this ad hoc committee, you'd represent our ward and take public input and bring it to this committee and work with the other 7 members who would be from the other wards to come up with recommendations to give city council. This is going to be a fairly short type of engagement. City council is interested in getting feedback fairly quickly, and I think that I'm not going to say a whole lot more about what the responsibilities are, but I will add a comment, and that's that we had a very, very, very brief discussion about this before this meeting started among some steering committee members, and we're willing to support whoever is this ad hoc committee member to get public input. And that could include putting ads out on a front porch forum or during composing a survey monkey and trying to get people to complete that and compile the results and do that in short order. So are there questions about what this committee is and what they're being asked to do?
Any questions? I see Karen has their hand raised.
Hi, Karen.
You're
You're on
muted.
mute.
You still want this up?
Sorry. Well, just because the screen is this part of this, I couldn't see. Sorry, but I just wanted to ask again. It said, oh, you moved it. It said that this was going to be a committee different than the city council and school board. Somebody had said that people, if you had been on the school board previously, you were not eligible. And I did write Jane, Jack, and Zariah and ask them about that, but I didn't hear back. Is that true? And why is that true? If so.
I think Jack and Jane are on. Maybe one of those could answer that.
I am sorry, go ahead.
Do you want me to go, Jane, or you want to go?
I was just gonna say, I do know that that's true, but I actually don't know the context as to why, but that's as far as I found out.
Yeah, so I thought that I'm sorry, Karen. I'm looking at the email thread right now because Sarah Carpenter, who had responded to an email thread with Carol, but I guess you weren't on it, but it was that same question. And that's why I didn't respond, because I thought it had already been addressed. But yeah, the idea behind the committee is that we were trying to make it as removed, sort of as apolitical as possible, or as removed from the existing political infrastructure in Burlington, and try to get folks who weren't necessarily vested in a certain outcome, and just trying to get folks who would, not come in with a particular bias or mission, but more that would be representative of their community and able to engage folks that otherwise normally wouldn't already engage with these processes. So that was kind of the idea behind it, to kind of remove it from the existing council and school board.
But I don't think, excuse me, I don't think of the school board as being a really politically driven group. And I just think that, I don't know, that kind of, it certainly limits the pool for people that live full-time in Ward 8. Because of the way the district was drawn up before, it's the only district, if you look at the map, that it's this long little skinny river of people instead of kind of chunks of housing. And I think that was purposely done like that. And I think balance would be better. And anyway, so yeah, I don't understand why you would eliminate people just because they might have served on the school board, for a year, like 10 years ago or something. That just seems like, you're hurting the possibilities of people that could help out with that by limiting it.
I hear that. Yeah, I hear that. The issue is that is the language in the resolution that we passed, and that was signed. So that is what we're operating under, but I definitely hear what you're saying.
And I understand that this was brought forward by wards 4 and 7, who were the wards that had already pretty high representation of their city councilors compared to people in wards 1 and 8. Isn't that correct? Like, you have a lot more constituents than the people in wards 4 and 7.
Well, that's what we're about to find out with the census data, is kind of how off is that balance. And it's supposed to be, very similar, but it could be skewed that way. That's possible. We're about to find out get that data.
Okay, because I thought after you did the last redistricting, still Ward 1 had a lower representation than people in wards 4 and 7.
Maybe
I don't-
very slightly,
Maybe
but
you weren't on the council then, but definitely when the results came out, that's how it was.
yeah, I mean, the purpose of redistricting is to bring it into alignment and balance and get the wards within a few percentage points of each other. So I don't know if you're talking about prior to the redistricting or after, but either way, like we're about to see the updated numbers and see what that balance is, and that's part of what's driving this process.
Hey, Jack, let me just ask something for clarification. So previous city councilors and previous school board members are not in the pool that can be in this ad hoc committee.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
And Richard, you had a question?
Yeah, I was quite involved in this 7 or 8 years ago, until the final committee was established, because the work that citizens were doing with the city council didn't bear fruit. And so I stepped away at that stage because I am not and will not be a citizen of the US, so I can't technically vote. But I do have a certain amount of institutional understanding of some of the things that have to be considered. And also, I would have thought that previous city councillors and school board members would have a little bit of institutional knowledge, which might be quite valuable in this situation. So, I mean, I can say more about my experience from 7 or 8 years ago, but I'll just leave it at that.
And then, Anne, I saw your hand up for a while. I don't know if you still wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, this is Anne Brenya, Ward 8. I think Karen summarized what I wanted to say. And I just find it bewildering that somebody who served on the school board, 5 years ago, Keith, would not be eligible for this committee, somebody who actually has the time and the interest in serving on this committee. And so is this a definite no for somebody like Keith? Is there any point in even deliberating the point further? Since I guess the rules have already been decided upon?
Yeah, that should I jump in, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that is the language that council passed, and I definitely hear that. Again, the idea was to try to get away from sort of the insiders, people who are already super involved and who already have a voice in city politics and who frequently engage. That was kind of the driving force behind that language, was to try to expand beyond that. I understand Ward 8 has unique challenges. But yeah, that's the language that we passed in council and that we're operating under. And so we can't at this point, go against that. If there's no one from Ward 8, we're going to have to obviously figure something out and do something. But at this point, we can't just violate, the resolution. The council would have to change it in order to allow that, which hasn't happened. So we're operating under the resolution that was passed.
Are there any other questions? If not, I think we're going to move over
Well,
to.
can I just say one thing?
Go ahead.
Jack, I hear what you say. The overriding concern at the last time redistricting was considered was that the new North End should somehow be left intact. And I don't know whether that has been discussed in your discussions in City Council, But I think it would be naive to think that that's not going to come into play and going to impact whatever committee is put together.
Noted.
I agree with that. Yeah, I'll just say I agree with that and I'll leave it at that.
Well, I mean, it's an important part in whatever arithmetic people put together to try to do the redistricting puzzle. It's very, very important, and it was an impediment last time, but I thought a good impediment because I understand it. So, I mean, I'm being devil's advocate here. I'm speaking from one side of my mouth and the other side, but those things come to play in the South End to a certain extent as well. And then all of a sudden you've got the two districts in the middle, and figure that out, and probably around the margins for the South End. And that's what it's going to come down to without even seeing the census figures.
Okay,
Are there any other questions or comments?
I don't see any. So I think we can move on to the nomination process. So I think we'll begin with Ward 1. Is there anyone that would like to make a nomination for the Ward 1 seat on the redistricting ad hoc committee, or would anyone like to nominate themselves? You can indicate by raising your hand.
I see no hands.
I
also see no hands.
I've been asked if I will do this, but it has got to be with the caveat that certainly that I am a non-citizen, so sooner or later someone else would have to do the voting. So it's a little bit of a sort of minister without portfolio, really. Would be doing the work without any say in the final resolution.
I see someone has their hand raised. Jonathan, okay.
Just for clarification, I don't know whether the city council needs to clarify or not, but I don't believe that there would be any votes that this committee would take to require citizenship. I think that representation must require residency, but not citizenship. Is that not correct?
Yeah, I can't.
Jane or somebody who sits closer to the attorney's office.
It wasn't issued last time. That's why I bring it up, and that's fine. I understand that, and good. We had a better representative than I would ever be.
I don't know why that was the case last time, but my understanding of the process this time does not require citizenship in order to serve on this committee. And the committee is essentially, the committee would offer feedback to the city council. They would report back to the city council. So I don't understand any reason that it would have to be a citizen.
Okay, so Richard, would you like to move forward with nominating yourself for the position?
Not if there's someone better qualified, no. But if there is no one else to represent Ward 1, then I will be glad to do it.
So last call. I am seeing no one else with their hand raised. So now, Richard, I don't know if you want to say any more words about why you're interested, or if anyone has any questions, just raise your hand and I can call on you. Carol, I see you have your hand raised.
Richard, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I mean, your past experience will be really helpful. At the same time, please lean on us. I mean, this is really hard, but to do the meetings is plenty. And then to do the outreach, and I think it's a really important point that all the ward representatives need to bring to that committee and to the city council. We've raised it with city council, our concern about the amount of time and energy that this will take. And it's really important that you as committee members advocate for yourselves and say, this is what we can do. This is where we need the city to fill in, whether it's CEDO or it's NPA or it's other city employees are going to need to help with the outreach. So you were elected as a single person, or you're nominating yourself as a single person, but I feel like you've got a core of people here who are going to support you and work with you.
Thank you.
And I was going to say the same thing. That's why my hand was raised. And I'd be more than happy to help you with like a Survey Monkey survey if you think that should help.
Sure.
Okay, great. So now I think we can move on to the voting process, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we can just, because one person's running, we can just all Ward 1 folks can just say like whether they're in favor of it or not, correct?
I don't think we even need a vote. It's an appointment.
Oh, okay.
If there's only one candidate.
Okay, awesome.
I think there
then-
should be some clear like decision though, whether it's a vote or something, at least for the meeting minutes.
So yeah, let's just do everyone, all in favor from all Ward 1 folks that are voting.
Aye.
Aye, okay, and then anyone on the screen, if you want to give me a thumbs up, or I see Jean's giving a thumbs up. Okay, Karen is, so it looks like all of the Ward 1 folks on the screen are saying yes as well. So I think that is good. And then Jonathan, if you just want to mark down everyone in person as well.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Richard.
Thank
Very
you.
exciting. Thank you.
Where's the champagne?
Now we're moving on to Ward 8. Is there anyone that would like to nominate someone from Ward 8 or would like to nominate themselves? I'm seeing Anne, you have your hand raised. Feel free to go. You're muted.
I'd like to nominate Keith Pillsbury.
Keith, does Keith say something now? Sorry, I want to make sure I'm doing this correctly so I don't mess anything up for the minutes. Keith, you're muted if you're speaking.
Thank you, Ann. I indicated an interest earlier because as the Ward 8 clerk, I walked our ward rather regularly. One year I was running for ward clerk. The next year I was on the ballot as school board member. And so I got to know the neighborhoods really well. I got to know the people really well, and most specifically, the more longer term people in our ward. And at the same time, I was also regularly attending the SGA, the student assemblies, about every 3 weeks. So I thought I was getting a good sense of the ward, and I thought that I could bring that knowledge, that background information, along with the issues that we've had in having our elections, our polls, which have been, we've had to do a lot of advocacy for ourselves, like getting a bigger space, being able to get people who do not live in the ward to work at the polls because we don't get enough, we aren't able to get enough volunteers from our own ward. So that was what I was going to bring to the committee. And I thought that I had enough connections through my work already that I would be able to get input from the Ward 1 voters. Then I read the resolution, and it just seemed like they were taking me out of the ability to bring my knowledge and connections in the ward to communicate with my ward members about their desires about, what's going on in the redistricting and in our representation. That is why I thought I initially volunteered and said I would be willing to do it if other people weren't able to or weren't interested. And now I feel like the city council has sort of said, we can't have you because you are already to whatever biased. And I can say that we've worked really diligently to register up to 300 students, new voters, every election. We have I can talk about the numbers. We have over a 4,000 checklist. And if you look at the numbers of people who are actually voting in our ward, it's nowhere near 25% of that. So it's sometimes, I won't say every time, we did have 1,400 time votes. I can't explain how that happened, but anyway, I just think that I could bring some information to the full committee and be helpful in that way. That was all my intent.
Thank you, Keith. So I don't know, like Jack or Jane, if either of you can speak to it, but are we allowed to, like, will this be a valid vote at the NPA if we move Keith forward? I just don't want to, I know that we have to be like diligent about that. So I don't want to move it forward if it violates the resolution and it's not going to be okay. I don't know if there's any insight about that.
Yeah, I mean, this just wouldn't, if we took the vote tonight, I don't really know what would happen because it wouldn't be, because unfortunately Keith doesn't fit the criteria laid out. And so we wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't be able to serve on the committee. So I don't think it would really get us anywhere to vote that way.
I agree.
Okay. Brian, I see you have your hand raised. If not.
Yeah,
if
I
you
do.
wanna-
I know I don't live in these wards, but I do represent the interests of people in these wards, and all the and what happens in these different wards all affects other wards. So I was hoping I could just make a comment about this and then step back, if that's okay. People look like you're tolerating it, so thank you. I'm struggling with this because I feel like to imply that a person's more political because they served in a political role than a person who isn't is a big assumption, because everything we do is political. And when people say they're not political, they're just not aware of their politics. They're not aware of how their decisions are affecting power dynamics in our society. Everything is political on some level. And I think that anyone could have an agenda. And just because someone's an elected official, we may have an agenda, but when we're representing people, we have to figure out the balance between that and people. And so I know I struggle with the decision that was made, but the reality is it sounds like the city council and the mayor have already decided this. And I wouldn't want for the whole city things to get disrupted. And I'm just wondering, like in a case like with Keith, because you're interested yet you can't do it, is there going to be a way, and so this is where I'll step back, is question, and I'll step back, is there going to be a way for members of the public to just weigh in on the decisions of this body? Because if so, even if Keith Pillsbury can't be on it, Keith, you could be at every meeting, influencing that process, because we live in this open democracy. So I just want to put that out there, that whatever you all decide, you decide. But my concern is just, I wouldn't want a decision to be made that then undermines the whole process for the city because one of the members, can't participate fully. And I wouldn't also want the people represented by Ward 8 to miss that chance of representation. And I think the problem here isn't Keith's interest, it's that we've been set up, and I get there's good reason, and I'm not judging you all, I'm just kind of questioning like the assumption that about people's agenda, but it's unfortunate. But I just wanted to share my thoughts on it and ask that question of like, is there going to be meaningful ways for public engagement to influence the decisions of this group? That's my question. Thank you.
I don't know. Yeah, Jack, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I think you raised a lot of great points, Brian. Yeah, the idea behind this committee and having the NPAs choose someone from each ward, it's not about trying to get someone who is gonna, you're gonna put someone in there and they're gonna go at it alone and kind of and really work as an individual on that committee. It's more about how do we hear from folks across the city. And so in my mind, the primary goal of the person serving on the committee is to bring in those voices, and Keith could be one of the primary voices that individual brings in and listens to, because Keith does have that experience, and Keith could still do that outreach, could still participate in the meetings. And if someone else serves in that role, they could really give Keith as much of a voice in the process as they want to, and ideally bring a lot of other folks into the process as well. All the meetings are public, and yeah, whoever serves in this role is meant to bring folks from their ward into that process, keep them informed, keep communicating with the NPA and with the broader community in their ward.
Okay, thank you, Jack. So is there anyone else from Ward 8 that is interested in serving that would like to nominate themselves, or would anyone like to nominate someone from Ward 8? Again, you can just signify with raising your hand and I'll call on you. And I see you are raising your hand.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that we'll have no representative from Ward 8, so I will nominate myself, I guess. I've been anticipating this redistricting process since Ward 8 was initially formed, and I was hoping that I would be able to participate in the process. I just feel a little pressured because of the time commitments and because of my work responsibilities, but I'll do the best that I can.
Thank you. And yeah, just to echo Carol's comments to Richard, if like anything that I can do to help with like posting on Front Porch Forum or gathering public input, that would kind of lessen that load for you, just let me know and I'm happy to do that and work with you. But thank you so much for stepping up. Does anyone have any questions for Anne?
I have not a question, but more of a comment. Thank you so much, Anne, for stepping up into this. I know it's kind of going to be a short stint, but a full stint of work. And Keith, I appreciate you also doing that. Looking back on it, I kind of almost, I wish there was a different way that was set up, because I do agree with a lot of what Brian said. And it shouldn't leave, just because you have a history of being so committed to your community and holding that position, it shouldn't leave you out of the process years down the road. And so maybe this is a good learning experience too for the next time we do something like this, to look at that a little bit more deeply. So I know that that's frustrating and I apologize for that, but thank you both so much. And that's greatly appreciated because we need it desperately. So thank you.
So now we'll just kind of do the same process of voting that we did for Ward 1. So all folks from Ward 8, if you want to just raise your hand to vote and forward, that would be great. So I see Keith's raising their hand. Jack is giving a thumbs up. Jane, so am I. I think that is everyone from Ward 8. So thank you, Anne, so much. And thank you, Keith, as well, for being committed and trying to get involved.
Thank you. And I look forward to working with Richard Hilliard
Yeah, thank you, Ann and Richard, and thanks.
and Keith.
Yeah, and Keith, I just want to thank everyone too. I know this process is not exactly how everyone wanted it, and it's a pretty fast process too. And I really appreciate everyone being willing to step up and try to make the best of it and try to make sure that our district is represented well in the process.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the Burlington Capital Plan. Martha, I believe you're here to present on it, so thank you for your patience.
It's been fascinating to listen to your conversation. So I learn a lot every time I go to any meeting. So thank you. My name is Martha Keenan. I work for the Clerk Treasurer's Office, and I am happy to bring you information on the continuing of the City of Burlington's capital infrastructure plan. So I have a slideshow that I did email. However, I have it to share, and I am still sometimes technologically challenged. So we'll see if we do this correctly. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes.
Okay. So, the main things are, what have we accomplished? What have we learned? And what are our next steps? So a little history is that in 2014, the mayor stated that he wanted to create a capital plan for the city and that it would be presented the following year. The next year, we did present the first drafts of that capital plan. And in September of 2016, we came to the city council and it was approved in a resolution, a 10-year capital plan. And in November of that same year, the voters approved a general obligation bond of $27.5 million to invest in our infrastructure. And this has pretty much, I've been with the city for 8 years almost, and this has been my life all 8 years. And so I'm hoping that you will come up with lots of good questions for me. We have completed our first 5 years, and the bond that we received was to cover the first 5 years. The capital plan, when it's created, is a picture in time. And as you probably know, capital and projects are not stagnant. So every day things evolve. And a good example is tonight, we have a tremendous thunderstorm out there. We received over an inch of rain in less than an hour. And roofs leak, potholes are created, there's flooding, and so projects are created from an event such as tonight. And so it is always evolving. During the first 5 years, which ended in fiscal year 21, we worked with all the departments, we worked with the public, we worked with the city council to reinvest wisely in the city's infrastructure. And it touched all aspects of the city, from the greenway, streets and sidewalks, buildings, our IT, our fleet. And each project that we consider takes into account the impact on the city's net zero energy goal. And I'm hoping you can't hear my dog in the background. My apologies. He doesn't like thunder. So over the last 5 years, what have we accomplished? A lot. We've improved over 14 miles of sidewalks. We doubled our street reinvestment from $1 million to $2 million a year. We rehabilitated 7 miles of the bike path, 90% of it. We created a new parks facility in Leddy Park where the grounds and trees maintenance crew are now housed, and that makes them more efficient. In that same facility, we added gas pumps. So we have both diesel and gas at Leddy Park, which previously, if a person was out plowing in a big snowstorm and they ran low on diesel, they had to go all the way back to 645 Pine in order to gas up and then go back out and continue their route. This allows them to stay out there and keep doing their job. So it saves both on time and labor and wear and tear on our streets. And our fire trucks don't have to go out of their zone when they fill up now so they can stay in their area. So it's really helped us to save in many different ways through creating that facility out there. We've improved a number of the city buildings, envelopes, insulation, new roofs, HVAC systems to improve the efficiency and reduce costs. We have worked with our IT infrastructure. Before this plan was implemented, the city spent about $125,000 a year on their infrastructure for IT. And that is really not sufficient for the technology that is coming these days. We spent a lot when the pandemic hit to bring people to these hybrid meetings, such as we're doing right now. And we are going to continue doing that in the future. We implemented, for security purposes, both an electronic door system for the city buildings. This ID is also a city employee's ID with a picture on there, so that they have a key and an ID at the same time. We replaced all the old city video systems with one single system that is tied into the dispatch in the police department, so that if there is an incident, the dispatch can pull up the camera closest to the incident and provide input to the person responding so that they can do it most efficiently and safest for them and for everyone else involved. We have created a couple of committees that have made life much easier as we try to strategize and be efficient. We created a capital committee, which is made up of department heads from a number of the areas that have the largest capital: Public Works, CEDO, and the Parks Department, as well as the CIO and the administration take part in that. We have a fleet committee, and the fleet committee created a policy and a strategy for financing. And that financing strategy is within this capital plan that we have. And then right now we're in the process, we have an asset management committee, and we're in the process of implementing an asset management software platform. This one is really the next step for the capital plan. It provides the inventory of all of our assets and what their condition is so that we can make good decisions as we move forward. It allows us to know what is failing and what the likelihood of failure is, so that we can strategize and use our dollars the most easily possible. What did we learn? We learned that the capital needs are evolving within the city. And our understanding initially wasn't complete. We worked 18 months to come up with the first capital plan, and every day we learn of things that we have to include in it now. We hadn't included bridges. The city has a lot of bridges. We hadn't included public safety. So there are a lot of radios, cell towers, repeaters that help both the fire and police department able to respond to their work. And we didn't have any of that included. We have decades of deferred maintenance to catch up on, and it's really going to take us decades to get there. This is an ongoing process. It is going to just keep revolving. And if we do it well, we take care of that deferred maintenance, and then we're able to be forward looking and make sure that we spend our money and prioritize well as we go forward. The fiscal year 22 budget survey that the administration put out showed that there was strong support for our infrastructure. When we looked at it, what our needs are over the next 3 years, we have needs of around $140 million. We have a lot of opportunities to fund that 140. There's the federal infrastructure bill, there's the American Rescue Plan, there's state funding for climate change and infrastructure. All of these are opportunities that we need to look at as we move forward with our capital plan. However, even with that and the grant opportunities, there's a need beyond that, and we still need to make a request of the voters. It will fill in But what we need to do is prioritize and make good choices, because we really can't fit everything in 3 years. Even if we were able to fund all $140 million, the city would be in chaos if we had that much construction going on within the city. So we have to time it well. We have to be thoughtful about how we do it. And we have to look for all of the funding sources we could possibly find. So when we created our first capital plan, we had different main sources of reinvestment. We did our sidewalks, our streets, the IT, transportation planning, our capital project management, facilities, parks, fleet, and our public safety. And what we had a basic amount that we were putting in each year in order to try and reach our goals. And we took the sidewalks from 1 mile a year to 3 miles a year. That move helps us move from 100-year turnover of our sidewalks to a 40-year turnover of our sidewalks, which is more within line of what that should statistically be. Our streets, we have a street capital tax, which provides around 2.3 million, but we also added another 700,000 into that. With the climate change that has been occurring, we have streets that are failing faster. The freeze thaw that's occurring over these years and these large rain events is playing havoc on our streets. So we need to continue that investment. I already spoke to the IT infrastructure. We have a lot of transportation planning. There are a number of different studies that are out there. And when I started, the budget was $125,000 a year. We've moved it to $460,000, and they have a number of projects. Generally, planning is exactly what they do, is they set up the designs and get the project started, and then they move into a project beyond it. Capital project management provides all of the resources to be able to get this work done, from consultants to staff. The facilities, we did some major work on some different facilities. City Hall and 645 Pine were both renovated, and we did a lot of work there. But I look at facilities like streets, is that the potholes are never going away and the problems in buildings are never going to go away. And we need to continually reinvest in those buildings. Parks does have money that comes from Penny for Parks and from impact fees, but they also have parts of their facilities and areas that aren't really covered under either of those areas, one being the boathouse. It's not really on land, so it isn't in a park, so it doesn't qualify for reinvestment from those sources. So we need to supplement the parks projects with these reinvestments. With our fleet, we need to reinvest. In this plan, we have for, let's see, 3 fire trucks, 3 snowplows, and 3 sidewalk tractors. So we picked items that have a life of 10 years or more that we could go out for a 10-year bond and be able to replace. We finance the fleet 2 different ways. We have this bonding for the larger vehicles with a longer life, and then each year we have been doing a master lease, which helps us get the items like the pickup trucks and the ambulances and the police cars, the items that do not have a life of 10 years. And lastly, we have the public safety. And right now, the communication system, radio infrastructure for the public safety for both fire and police is at end of life, and it needs to be replaced. And that is about $5.3 million. And that would be adding multiple routers and repeaters and improving cell towers to make sure that there is coverage throughout the city so they can respond correctly. Of course, there are a lot of other capital needs too, and we try to find different ways to match them. We have a lot of grant projects, some rail yard enterprise, Champlain Parkway, Shelburne Street roundabout, the rail realignment. Right now, Shelburne Street's underway and the rail realignment with Amtrak planning on being back in December. These 4 projects are about a $60 million worth of investment, and the city is only putting in $6 million. So this is one way that the city really looks at leveraging their dollars, is that we can go out and use federal or state dollars to improve our infrastructure in a much grander scale than we could ever do ourselves. We have a lot of comprehensive plans to utilize for helping our strategy, like PED master plan, the park master plan, scoping and corridor studies. We also have some larger revisioning projects that we need to consider or are considering. The library went out and had a consultant come in and revision the library for what should it be in the 20th century. A lot of people now depend on the library for computer needs. And so their technology center has expanded greatly. They have a really large youth group and good teen and youth programs. And the building was last redone in 1980. So it needs to come up. That is around $22 million. The fire station and the fire chief looked at consolidating 2 stations into one, which would save the city money in both resources and location. It came in around $16 million. And they did find a location that would keep the response times equal to what they are now. So it would not hurt that in any way. And we have consolidated collection, which I believe Richard spoke to earlier about a conversation that's ongoing with that. That's around, if we were to take that in-house ourselves, that's about $6.7 million. With all of this work comes operational maintenance that goes along with it. We have to look, as we're looking at this work, what does it mean for the work that has to be done to maintain it moving forward? So pavement markings, landscaping, facilities maintenance, all really important things to try and consider as we're looking at what work we do. What are our next steps? First is presenting this 3-year plan, which I am going around to all of the wards, the commissions, the committees, and talking and helping educate. I met with the community voices last week, trusted community voices last week. And it's been great to go out and help people understand this ongoing need that we have. Next week, we're looking to meet with both the Board of Finance and City Council to go through this plan and determine whether we wish to bring a request to the voters in November, which right now there is a special election set up for November 9th, and we would try and go at that same time. During all this time of the next 4 months, 3-4 months, is to prioritize our need and get input. During some of that is strategizing, is what can we use the American Rescue Plan funds? What could be done through the state funding opportunities, the federal infrastructure bill? They're all coming forward. They have different items that they can address. And so we are looking at, with the American Rescue Plans, can they help us with building ventilation with and making it better that way? Areas, as example, is the Miller Center is a recreational facility for the city. The windows don't open within the building. So can we replace all the windows so that they open, so that we improve the ventilation there? And can we do it through opportunities from funding other places? And if we can't, then we need to use our own bonding dollars. And during this time, we're continuing to look at what makes a sustainable capital plan and what is that annual number that we need that will help us maintain this on an ongoing basis. Considerations that are coming up at this point is in 2018, the city created a debt policy cap. And looking at that and what are we able to borrow, what the other funding opportunities are, the request, this is strategy. The longer we wait and defer, the more the repairs are going to cost us. So this is just a small portion of the schedule. It keeps expanding as I'm able to reach out to more commissions and committees. So I think I had 3 more added this week, and it's really fun to go out there and talk with everyone. Questions?
If anyone has any questions, please just raise your hand and I can call on you. I'm seeing Richard, you have your hand up.
Yep. Just 3 real quickies, Martha. That was great. Thank you very much indeed. That was really interesting. So first of all, I think you should give Megan Moyer a pay increase, get her under contract for 20 years. Second of all is Memorial Auditorium under facilities maintenance?
So Memorial is a part of this request, and it's something that we're looking at right now. I know it has been discussed as possibilities of a number of things. Just before the pandemic, we had been close to working out an agreement to renovate it. Unfortunately, the pandemic has not been nice to it, and it does have a lot of deferred maintenance to it. So we do have money to do something with Memorial. The question is, what will we do with Memorial? And that will be a further conversation.
Just so long as it's on the radar anyway, I think it's really important that's a statement at a gateway of Burlington. The last thing is, you haven't mentioned the school district at all, and I know that's a can of worms, but I really think that any capital plans that the city embarks on, I can never understand why there wouldn't be some sort of intersection with the school district, but I'll just leave that comment out there.
So you are correct, and I actually helped the school do their capital plan and have worked with them in the past, and we are very cognizant of the high school and the issues there, and their bonding tie into our bonding and our debt capacity. And so we are very much, is it tied at the hip per se, and something that is needed to be collaborated on. There have been a number of conversations over the years of ways we could do that, whether that be with their general services and our facilities, sharing or using spaces together. And I don't think that conversation is done yet. So it's a good point.
Does anyone else have any questions? Tom, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question, follow up on the school issue. Has there been, you've had discussions with the school people with regard to capital budget? Is there any potential for state money to be used to rebuild the high school? Or is that not going to happen?
I do not know that answer. So I can't speak intelligently to it.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Seeing no other hands. Thank you, Martha, for coming in tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks.
Now we are moving on to the presentation on the addition to COTS Family Shelter. So folks that are here to present on that, feel free to get started.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not sure how to make myself seen here, but I hope you can hear me. My name is Bob Duncan. Here we go, join as a panelist. unmute and start video. Okay, good evening, everybody. I had sent, hi, there's Jonathan, and I think maybe Arthur Chukman from our office is on the call as well. We had sent in our presentation materials, and I'm not sure whether you're able to put them up on the screen or whether I should do that from my computer here if you give me share screen capability.
I think you should have the ability to share your screen.
Okay, and just give me 1 second to bring that up.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so does everyone see the site plan that's here?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I assume that everybody in wards 1 and 8 is familiar with the location. This is the Cots Family Shelter. It was for many years the YWCA headquarters at 278 Main Street. So in the drawing that you see on the screen, if you can see my cursor along the right-hand side here, this is Main Street. So north is actually facing to the left, and across the street, pretty much directly across the street, is Edmonds Middle School, and just up the hill a little bit, the elementary school with the connecting building in between the two. And this heavy line here indicates the edge of the footprint of the consolidated communications building that is on the corner of South Union and Main. To the north is a property that abuts eventually on College Street at 289 College Street. And to the east is a building that is a series of condominiums. There's a Victorian building that sits on the street and an addition built in the 1980s with condominiums in it. So this plan that I'm showing you is a combination floor plan and site plan. This portion of the building, this L-shaped portion, is the historic building, with this portion being the actual original masonry building, and this portion being an L that was added to that building probably in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And this small addition right here was added in 1991 when this became the headquarters for the YWCA. So we're proposing an addition to this building of 16 units of perpetually affordable housing. There'll be a mix of units ranging from studios to 2-bedroom units. And the reason that it's an addition rather than an independent building is really twofold. The site limitations are pretty considerable. This is the rear yard setback line here. According to zoning, it's 25% of the lot depth. So we can't really go any further to the north. And we also are fairly limited because this is the western setback line. So we can't really go any closer to the consolidated communications building. And we also wanted to take advantage, one of the other reasons for doing the addition is that the existing historic building is handicap accessible only on its main level. So it's accessed from this addition that was built in 1991, which in this corner right here includes a wheelchair lift. So from the rear, folks can enter and get to this main floor. This plan happens to be the main floor of the family shelter, and access those rooms and those common and public facilities. But the second floor, where the majority of the bedrooms are, is not accessible. So one of the reasons for making this an addition to rather than separate is that we're putting an elevator in here that actually will be able to serve the new addition, and through this link at both the first floor and the second floor will be able to serve the existing building. So all portions of that existing building will now be handicap accessible, which is a nice benefit for that building. The approach to this, there is an existing driveway here. It's a gravel drive. We're proposing to pave it, but it is coming off of Main Street at this location. And so we're maintaining that driveway. The primary entrance to the building is here, which gives you direct access to the elevator and to the stair, as you can see. But in an effort to prioritize the sense of pedestrian importance here, since we're sharing, people are actually coming in by cars, not very many, but able to drive across this. We're creating this plaza area here that is linked to Main Street via a sidewalk, so that there's a direct pedestrian connection that brings you here. The scoring and pavement of the concrete will act as a means of alerting drivers. There's a different thing going on here, so that we can focus on the main entry, which is a covered entry at this location. It also connects via sidewalk to this rear parking area. We have a total of 9 spaces. Interestingly enough, given the recent zoning change, there are no requirements for parking at this location under zoning, but we realize that both for staff who serve the family shelter, as well as some of the residents in both the family shelter and the new construction will have cars. We've maximized the amount of spaces we can provide on the site for a total of 9 spaces, one of which is handicap accessible and located close to the main entry here. We're also providing a trash enclosure here, which is in approximately the same location as the existing trash enclosure, so that, and it'll function the same way. Trash collection vehicle comes in here, gets the trash and backs out. They've been doing that for over 30 years for serve this building in its various ownerships, and that will continue to be the case. We're also, because we're encouraging bike circulation, we're building a covered bike here, part of which is required by zoning, but nevertheless, we want to do that. In all of our projects, we encourage bicycle storage and parking and use of bicycles. I'm going to switch now to a different screen, which shows elevations of the facility. So excuse me, I'm just going to scroll here. If you were actually approaching the building on the driveway from Main Street, you would see this facade, which has some brick detailed in a way similar to the historic building that signifies the entrance. When I was describing for you that plaza, it's really right in this area here outside the entry. And this walkway then continues to the rear of the property where the other parking area is. We're also providing at the second floor here a common space for all of the residents of the 16 apartments to have shared space that can be used for things like birthday parties or some other celebratory event, or for meetings that might happen, or there could be a community meeting, could be a building-wide meeting for some reason that would occur in that location. And then at the third floor, the roof over the second floor here is an outside terrace. So we have some outside space for folks who live in the building that can use that space in certain, obviously in nice weather. It's not protected from the weather, but for a small roof over this connector piece here. So it's accessed from the third floor in this location. This elevation that I'm showing you here is actually the west elevation. So this is what you would see of the existing family shelter, and it has a lap siding addition. This is the L that was built subsequent to the construction of the brick building in the late 1800s, or actually the brick building is probably more like 1850. And we think this addition is probably more like the 1890s. And then this addition that was built in 1991, it currently has a sloping roof on it. We're proposing to put a flat roof there in a way to make this connection between new and old, a more gentle connection between the new addition here and the existing building. One of the things that you'll notice here is a slight differentiation in materials at this lower level here. We're proposing to use a porcelain tile product there that will not emulate the stone foundation of the existing building, but it will recall that as a means, as a base for this addition to sit on. We're using a combination of lap siding in a couple different colors, and also some panel siding and some metal siding on this, and I'll go over that as we go around the building. This building is being proposed to be an all-electric building, so that we'll be using heat pumps for heating and cooling. And as such, we'll be providing a very robust envelope, which is necessary when you're looking at doing all-electric heating. The existing building, however, will stay as gas-fired boiler system for the existing building. It's not feasible to change the envelope there sufficiently to be able to rationalize or justify an all-electric composition there. So this elevation you're seeing is the east side, looking at the building from the driveway. This would be where that little plaza area is that's designated in concrete. You can see the band of the base of tile coming around. And then there's a break in material here between the first floor and the upper floors of the building. And here, the purple siding that you'll see in this elevation and also in the north elevation are actually defining the circulation systems in the building. So this is the stair tower. And on the north side, it's actually a little recess where the corridor has light at the end. And so those methods are being defined by a slightly different material. As I mentioned, the building is served by an elevator. It has a tower, which is both necessary for the elevator's functioning itself, and we've chosen to put a sloped roof on it. The roof does slope to the north so that it can drain onto the new flat roof and not cause any drainage problems for the roof below or the pedestrian terrace that's there. And then on the north elevation, as you can see here, is where that purple siding continues. This is the corridor that serves all the units on both sides. So here we have some of the lap siding in a slightly different articulation. Here, the two components of the facade here, separated by the circulation corridor, and also this repeating of this motif on the fourth floor will be slightly stepped back from in two locations, from the west side and from the north side. I'm going to stop screen sharing right now and just open up another file, if you'll give me 1 second, because I do have some perspectives of the building that I'd like to share. So we, let's see, sorry, that, I don't think that showed up. So are you seeing a bird's eye view here? Okay, so so this is a perspective that's taken, obviously from bird's eye view. This is the existing original 1840s, 1850s building with its L, the portion of the existing building where we're proposing to take off part of the roof. And then this is the proposed addition here. And you'll see on this drawing, this is really the only place, if you're a bird, can you see the rooftop equipment. So we've been consulting with our mechanical engineers for locations of rooftop condensing units and, condensing units, and the energy recovery ventilator, the ERV, that will provide fresh air and exhaust air from the building. This is the consolidated communications building that's on the corner of South Union and Main. And then this is a relatively accurate but rough approximation of the existing condominium building that is located to the east. This building in the rear is what I described earlier as 289 College Street. That is an accurate model of that building, as it's a project that we designed, I don't know, half a dozen years or so ago, and fronts on College Street. So we know that that fits in here contextually and is the right size. So this is a view as if you were a pedestrian coming down the sidewalk on Main Street with the historic building here and the new addition at the rear. The driveway comes into this location. It's actually a shared curb cut with the condominium building to its east and our driveway here. So you can see the entryway here that we've chosen to clad in brick to relate back to the existing building. And then this is showing that sort of little plaza area that bisects the driveway and serves as an indicator of this is a pedestrian space. So looking more closely down the entryway, you can see, of course, this is a person's eye height looking down the driveway, and none of the rooftop equipment is visible. This is the arcade under which the main entrance to the building leads to the elevator and stair, and the driveway broken by the plaza in this location. So looking southwest, so in the background, you see Edmonds Middle School here with the connecting building between the middle school and the elementary building, which you can't quite see in the background there. And Consolidated Edison, this is a modeled height. There are windows in this facade that we don't have accurate information to locate them, but there are some windows in this facade, but we just don't know where they are. So from the one thing that I didn't mention in the site plan discussion is that the rear parking here, all residents in the building can access to get easily out to trash or out to bike storage or to a car from a stair that's right here that goes from grade up to the first floor level and leads into the first floor corridor. So unless a person was bound by a wheelchair, they would all residents would be able to come out here and access this picnic area and landscape area, as well as get to bike storage and to trash. Otherwise, a person would use the elevator to come down to this level, which is at grade and actually halfway between the basement level and the first floor. So this building is 4 stories in height. It does include an occupied basement, and in the basement there are storage units, a laundry space for all building residents, and mechanical space, including electrical room and the elevator machine room and so on. So these windows are well above, they're full-size windows, and there are 3 small apartments. 3 of the studio apartments are located at the lowest level. And then this is a view, doesn't have buildings across the street modeled in it, but this is where the bike storage building is in the northwest corner of the site. This is the trash storage here in the northeast corner of the site. There's that stair that I was mentioning. You can see the basement units in this location here. And then one final view. So this is the original 1840s, 50s building here. The current play space that exists between this building and Consolidated Communications. The property line here is really in about this location. So Consolidated Communications does have a little bit of property here, but they very graciously allowed COTS to use this space for their outdoor space, and their kids use this and its play space and so on. So once again, you can see the 4 stories here, no mechanical equipment visible, the basement location of windows. So of these 3 units on the lower level, 2 are corner units, which means windows on 2 sides, and 1 center unit with windows on 1 side. I also, if anyone would like to see, I could share the electrical site plan that we have that shows photometrics, because I know people are sometimes concerned about that, and we have a very strict zoning ordinance that defines light levels and so on. So this drawing is oriented in the same way as the original drawing that I showed you, with the existing building in this location, the new addition here, and it's probably hard for you to read, but all of these little dots are foot candle readings at these locations. So along the perimeter here, they're all either 0 or 0.1 foot candle, which is very small amount of light. The highest readings, excuse me, I have to take out my glasses to read this at this point, but the highest readings are right here at the main entry of around between 10 and 14, and the majority of them are in the range of 2 to 3 foot candles. So like for instance, in here, this is 3.3, scaling back to 1.3. At the building where there is a pole mounted light here, at the ground here about 3.5, and they grade away much in the way that contours grade away from the building to be diminishing in foot candle as you get closer to the property lines, which is one of the requirements of the dark sky ordinance. So there's some more detail here, including some of the light fixtures that we're proposing. These are some. They look like can lights, but they're actually a surface mounted light. They only stick down 1/2 inch. These would be in the soffits of the arcade at the entry, and also the covered roof by the rear stair. And then we have these fixtures here. This fixture, I'm sorry, is located on the building in these 2 locations, and just gives it some additional pools of light right there at the main entry to accentuate that as a pedestrian, an important pedestrian place. But as you can see, the foot candles drop off pretty dramatically, so they're down to 0.1 at the property line. And then this bollard fixture is also a downlight only fixture, and it is located right there to give some additional illumination just as you enter into the property here. So I know that I've gone through this very quickly, and I'm speaking very fast because I know you have a big agenda, and we didn't have too much time allocated to us on the agenda. So I turn it over to you folks for any questions that you might have. I'd be happy to answer them. And if you need more information that I haven't already given you, I'm happy to do that as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Keith, I see your hand is raised. You're muted.
Okay, Bob, I understand that you said you have 16 new affordable units.
Yes.
Will there be spaces for temporary, COTS is usually temporary housing? Well, does that mean that they will come, they won't, will they have a long-term ability to live there? And in the other space where there were families living for a little bit before they moved on, is there another space for more temporary living for families?
So Jonathan Farrell, who's with COTS, might be able to answer this better than I, but I'll take a stab at it.
Okay, I'm happy to answer that one, Bob. Thanks. Hi, Keith. I'm Jonathan. I'm with COTS, the facilities director there.
Okay.
So the new building will be permanent housing for folks. We're specifically targeting families in this location because it is an addition to our family shelter. The unit sizes are based on the last 5 years of data, 3 years pre-COVID, and the last 2 years of our motel outreach that we've done for families that are housed in emergency motels. So the new building will be permanent housing. The shelter will remain as it is. We have capacity for 10 families in that building now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else have any questions? Jack, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, sorry if I missed this. And this is, I can literally see out my window. Well, it's kind of dark now, but the location, I'm on College Street right behind it. So this right now, it's just a parking lot, right? What you guys are planning to build on top of?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is exciting. Thanks so much for presenting.
Sure.
Okay, final call for questions. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone else's hands raised. Thank you, Duncan and Jonathan, for coming in tonight.
So just, if I may just add one thing, as you all know, a condition of applying for a zoning permit for a major impact review project is to present to an NPA, which we're happy to do, and glad to have the opportunity. I was just checking to see, do you have some sort of formal process where you alert the zoning department that we have been before you, or is that just something that we say that we've done when we make our zoning application, which we hope to do in the next week or so? So just a curiosity as to how that I gets dotted and T gets crossed when we make the zoning application.
I think you just fill out the form.
Okay.
Yeah, and they'll be able to, like, these are recorded and put on YouTube. So if they want to like double check, they can, I'm sure they could just reach out to someone on the steering committee, which is public, or just check on the YouTube channel to confirm it if they need. But I don't think we've ever been asked before to confirm anything.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
And Bob, the agenda is also on the NPA website, so you can always link to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Awesome. Now we're gonna head into the city council update. And I'm not seeing any of either of our school commissioners. So unless they show up in the next couple of minutes, we'll probably just not, we won't put that on the agenda. So Jack, Jane, or Zariah, whoever wants to kind of kick us off, feel free.
I am happy to. Sorry, I'm keeping my screen off. I have a bad eye infection and don't want to present that to y'all. So I have brought up divestment from fossil fuels to this group before, based on a resolution that I brought forth in November of 2020. I can't believe that's almost a year ago. But we did hear back from the Burlington Employees Retirement Board, the representatives from that board, regarding divestment of our assets from fossil fuel companies. And I can happily say that the report confirmed that the only fossil fuel investments the city has are actually in the pension fund, and that total was about $4.5 million. And those are in a lot of the major companies. So what the board now is going to do is explore ways and methods of actually divesting that and coming back with a plan for divestment. So they control that fund. The council has zero control over that, and that's why that board is tasked with this. So that's just an update on that front. And then on more new information, we voted on a sex work resolution brought forth by Councillor Freeman, That resolution was passed unanimously, and what that resolution does is it helps start a process of looking at the ordinances and the charters in the city regarding sex work. And the primary whole purpose of this was to decriminalize sex work and essentially. So this is something that would make sex work safer and would make sure that there's a lot of safeguards in place in terms of prevention. And obviously this is something that I read about a lot, but there are incredible statistics about the crimes that take place involving this work. And so this is something that would help at least prevent and enforce, crimes against, or make sure that this is we're helping to prevent these types of crimes and violence and things like that. So this is a really good step in in a good direction for our city, and making sure that people are safe, people at work are safe. And so I was really proud to vote on that. Let's see. Another good thing that I think I'm trying to cover for 2 months of I think we took a 2-month hiatus from NPAs. So I know that we voted 10-1 on a resolution that I actually brought forth, which was to divest the city funds. I know I do a lot of divestment, to divest the city funds from nuclear weapon manufacturing and weapons systems. So that's something that a couple of local activists came to me about. And I had some ongoing conversations with them through the spring and into the summer about this. And also talked to the same board, the Burlington Employees Retirement Board, about this. And so it's a similar system of divestment and process in terms of, going to the as the fossil fuel resolution is. So that was kind of an easy step for us to take, since we kind of forged that about a year ago with divestment from fossil fuels. So it's a similar process, and I can definitely report on that in future meetings. So I'm happy that that process has started, and that was also voted 10-1 on. So happy that we are moving in that direction as well, in terms of peacekeeping and not investing in weapons and manufacturing. Another big thing, and you might have seen me write some things lately in VT Digger and North Ave News and on our Front Porch Forum about, but it's revolving around consolidation of waste in the city of Burlington. I did not know that this was going to be such a hot topic, but it's something that I think if we do this right, regardless of what direction we go in and what decision we make, it's going to be really good for our city. But I do know that things need to be changed. Personally, that's what I believe. But we are looking at consolidating the waste collection citywide. So currently we have separate trucks doing separate routes, and we have a lot of companies kind of involved with collecting trash, recycling, organics, compost, what have you. So the whole goal here is to make it so there are less trucks, and the same truck can pick up 2 different types of waste per se. And we'd have less different companies having so many different routes. So a lot of roads, and a lot of the roads that I actually live near have multiple different trucks, different days of the week, and sometimes multiple times a day. That's a lot of routes to be taking. That's a lot of emissions. That's a lot of noise. And so our whole goal is to reduce that, and consolidating just makes things efficient across the board. So that is what we're currently debating as a council and as a city, as to how we're going to consolidate if we choose to. So we can kind of choose between implementing a municipal waste collection system where it would be more of a public model, or to create a district model where private haulers would enter a bidding process, and the bidder that was selected would be able to collect from whatever district that they were bidding on exclusively. So that's kind of somewhat how we have our current system. So we see a lot of those bigger companies, bigger names, going around our city. So what consolidation would do on the municipal level would implement things more at a city level and make it more of it would be a city entity, essentially, like how our water department is, and how, so it's like we would own it, and it kind of keeps the assets here. And yes, it would be a bit of a financial lift in the beginning, but long term and even medium term, there's a lot of payback there, and essentially making it ours. And I think that there's benefits to both sides, and we are weighing those options. But definitely reach out with any questions about any type of system, because this is something that we do want as much input as possible on, because it will impact every single person, whether there's an opt-out method or not. This is a decision that people will be looking at some point. So we are taking this up on, I believe, the meeting of the 27th, which is the last meeting of this month. Most likely it will be on the agenda for then. And so, yeah, definitely reach out if you have any questions between now and then. I'll also be posting more information as I learn it between now and then too. But yeah, it is about trash, but it's a big deal, and it's kind of exciting because change is coming, hopefully no matter what, and it will be good no matter what, because it's a long-term plan and there's going to be a lot of input. And whether we go with the hybrid model or the municipal model, consolidation seems like a really good option for Burlington. That's all I have for bigger updates. So I'll kick on over to whoever wants to take it next. Thanks.
Zariah, you want to go, or you want me to jump in?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Jane. So yeah, another big action that we took at our last meeting and continue to grapple with, and I know Zariah will talk about it too, but is around policing and staffing levels. At our last meeting, we had a resolution to increase staffing at BPD. It ended up getting divided. The question was divided into two questions, and the council had a split vote on raising the sworn officer cap, so that failed. That aspect failed, but we did approve 2 additional community service liaison roles, and those are not swarmed officers, but they are full-time positions at BPD that deal with a lot of chronic issues surrounding homelessness, surrounding addiction and substance use, mental health, folks who require a high level of service and who interact a lot with BPD. And these roles would be trained specifically to respond to and try to provide resources for those folks. And I know that I think there was just a story today or yesterday in WCAX that those roles are now being hired. We had approved a few of them way back in, I think, March as well. So we just added 2 more. And I'll let Zariah talk a little bit more about other public safety stuff that's going on, but she wasn't at our last meeting where we took that vote. So wanted to touch on that. So we haven't had a meeting since August 9th was our last meeting, but we're meeting again on Monday, and we're going to get back into meeting every 2 weeks. It's going to be really busy, especially with the fact that we are going to have this special, city election in November that Martha alluded to. So we'll be voting on this sustainable infrastructure bond that you all just heard about, whether or not to place that on the ballot for November. There's also a proposal from Burlington Electric Department, which would allow them to basically seek out money so that they could do a lot of their infrastructure investments and sort of climate net zero related investments up front without having to put as much pressure on rates. So it's kind of a financing bridge, but they need voter approval to be able to go out and get that money. So I think both of those are really key for the city, for our infrastructure, and for our net zero goals. And we'll be voting whether or not to put those on the November ballot. I am bringing a resolution on Monday regarding legal resident voting. That's what I'm choosing to call it. It's been called non-citizen voting. It's been called all resident voting, but Burlington, the city council has passed this a couple of times. It was last on the ballot, I think in 2015 or 2014. And I'm looking to place it on the ballot for March. So this is just the first step in that process, but I'll be introducing that resolution on Monday. Another item that I'm bringing on Monday has to do with the regulations for new development. We had in the presentation that we just had around this new development on Main Street, the presenter mentioned the parking requirements. That was in reference to change that we made last year. This is related to that, but basically shifting what we require of new developments away from just requiring parking lots and towards requiring sustainable transportation for new developments. That was something we started in on last year with the change. And I think it was, Duncan, I think you mentioned it, but it was only for downtown and along transit corridors. And I'm bringing forward a proposal to expand that throughout the city. I think those were the main items that I was going to cover. So I'll pass it off to Zariah, and then if there's questions or if I think of something else, I'll maybe grab it back.
And like Jack mentioned, I wasn't at the last city council meeting, and I've been out of state for a bit, so I don't have as many updates. I will say the CNA report, I think it's supposed to come out tonight. So I haven't seen it yet, and I assume they're probably working right up until the deadline. So, but we should have it by the end of this week, which is pretty exciting. I know that some of us, including me, were a little disappointed with Talitha and then the Kyle Johnson reports. I think it'll be good to get kind of a good substantive report. And I think this will be a really good report to help us make some decisions going forward. The only other thing to mention is there's an emergency city council meeting, I think is the formal name for it, but it's been scheduled for a while, regarding the airport director, which I think folks may have seen. There's been some news articles about it. So there will be a kind of a unique city council meeting where there will be much more of a presentation from two legal counsels. Both the city has an outside counsel, and then Jean Richards has an outside counsel, before there will be a vote on termination or not. And it's definitely just a tough kind of issue, because it's clear that there have been leadership issues, but they also, I don't think, have been elevated in the way that you might expect that there should be. So I think there's both kind of personnel issues, but also highlighting some structural issues with how things get reported up the chain. So sorry to have that meeting tomorrow, but that's kind of the one thing that's happening before we go back into a regular city council schedule. And that is it from updates from me.
I'll just note one other thing too. There's not a proposal on the table yet, but obviously the reappraisal has been a huge issue on people's minds, and the council didn't, we didn't play a role in that in the recent reappraisal. We didn't have formal decision-making over how that took place, but some counselors, including the three of us here, are looking into not only ways to make that process better in the future and try to be proactive about it, so that we don't have a repeat of what we've just all experienced, but also seeing if there's ways that we could better provide relief for folks who've been hit hard and in general who are hit hard by property taxes, who are struggling economically. So it's a very difficult issue, but some of us have been putting our heads together and trying to come up with some solutions. So just wanted to make you all aware of that. And it's possible that we'll try to bring something forward at an upcoming council meeting.
And when Jack says some of us, I think it's been especially helpful. There was, it sounds like a meeting between Joe, who was recently elected and was on the tax board, and then some other folks in the community. And I think Jane joined as well to kind of brainstorm some solutions. So yeah, not just us as counselors brainstorming, but I think there's been some community effort around finding some solution.
Definitely. And one of the ideas that we've discussed is specifically to try to get more community input on this and on how we move forward.
Does anyone have any questions for the counselors? Richard, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, a couple of real quick ones. First of all, seeing as it's the next thing on the agenda, on your agenda, is there any sense that Jean Richards' behavior is worse than the mayor's behavior in front of Planning Commission and City Council, and coercion and menacing behavior from about 5 or 6 years ago when we were discussing City Place? Just leave that on the table because his behavior was awful. Secondly, is Jane, you spoke well about the consolidation of trash, for want of a better word, and I got some ideas on that, but not for now. But I've often felt that Chittenden County is poorly served by having so many different municipalities competing against each other. What are you doing to engage Chittenden County Solid Waste so that we have a county-wide solution rather than just Burlington going it alone? You could also reference that as well to Jack's comments about social workers, but
sure, yeah, no, that's a great point.
Well, the other thing, just to interject, is we're paying for social workers basically for people who are from out of Burlington, and I just leave that on the table. That's a county-wide problem. It's just deposited in Burlington streets, but it's a county-wide problem. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of my research, especially since I became a counselor, I realized that a lot of the issues I see in Burlington, I see in a lot of towns and cities across Chittenden County and in Vermont. We see a lot of parallels. So that's definitely a larger fish to fry in terms of municipal waste. But it's definitely that you bring up a really good point, because a lot of these haulers, they're driving through these other towns too, and they serve a lot of the other towns. So it's any thematic issues we're seeing here, I'm sure other people are seeing other places, and there's so many reports of that too, and statistics on that. But in terms of our influence as a city in Chittenden County, it does help to move the needle forward in some way that's good and different, to help kind of inspire these other municipalities to maybe move in the same direction. That's the only answer I really have to the Chittenden County wide issue on that point for right now. But you bring up a really valid concern, and something that is it's very real, and there are very real solutions to it. It's just one counselor.
Yeah, just economy of scale was all I was thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that that's really good to think about, and hopefully, our representatives and such can be engaged on this topic as well. And some of them are actually, but in terms of implementation, I don't know what that timeline would look like, and what changes, we still have to figure out our own situation first, I guess. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks.
Are there any final questions?
Oh, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, and then
Oh,
Jonathan.
no, there's another question, so I'll hold
Okay.
off.
Okay, Jonathan.
Really quick question. Welcome back, Soraya. And when do you expect the public to be able to see the CNA report?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
He asked when.
Welcome back. When do you think the public will be able to see the CNA report?
It should be, I think that, so I don't think anybody has it yet. And then, so I don't want to promise anything on if they're going to deliver by tonight, but I know that next week there's supposed to be some kind of meeting, sharing it with, I want to say maybe the Public Safety Committee. Sorry, I've been skimming my emails so quickly that don't want to misinform anyone. And I assume that it'll be public after that. So I would assume by latest next week.
Thank you. Great.
And then Jack, do you want to make final comments?
Yeah, I just didn't want to, I remembered that Richard earlier had raised the point about crime and the statistics, because I had posted to Front Porch Forum just sharing statistics from a recent BPD presentation to the police commission, and yeah, those aren't meant to be like these statistics are everything, and you know, they reflect what's going on in every community, and they're the definitive, you know, they're the sole source of what's going on in the community. So it wasn't meant to be that. It was just meant to provide that high level data in terms of citywide crime that BPD is aware of. So I think it's definitely one of the best sources, maybe the best source of data that we have for the city as a whole regarding crime, but it's not, it doesn't encompass everything that happens in every neighborhood, or the trends don't reflect what's happening on every street. There's a lot that BPD doesn't necessarily capture in their data. So just wanted to clarify that.
Do it on Front Porch Forum.
Okay, any final questions? Okay, so doesn't look like our school commissioners showed up, so we're just gonna skip over that. Thank you all for coming tonight. It was a great meeting, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.